Welcome to Shatter.
At some point, she stopped looking me in the eye. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just gradually. Like eye contact became too heavy, too close, too real. She changed her phone password. It used to be something we both knew. Something stupid, inside joke level stupid. Now it was nothing. New code, new rhythm to her fingers when she typed. I asked once. She laughed, shrugged, said, "Don't be weird. You're just paranoid." That phrase hit harder than she expected, because it wasn't a dismissal. It was a warning. Stop asking. And I heard it loud and clear. After that, she started treating my curiosity like it was a personality flaw, like needing clarity was some kind of mental instability. She started acting tired every time I opened my mouth. The kind of tired that says, "Don't make me deal with this again." But I wasn't starting fights. I wasn't stalking. I wasn't screaming. I was just noticing. And that, apparently, was the problem. From then on, everything was different. Not on the surface. No big fights. No slammed doors. But in the air, there was a hum of avoidance. A coldness in small gestures. A distance she didn't bother hiding anymore. And every time I tried to speak, she'd hit me with that same tired line. "You really need to get help. I can't keep doing this. You're exhausting." It was like she had a script. A checklist of deflections, prepared just in case I got too close to the edge of truth. But I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't accusing her. I was asking, observing, reacting to the patterns changing around me, like furniture being moved in the dark. She stopped telling me where she was going, said I was being controlling, said I needed to relax. But phones started going face down. Laughter started arriving through locked bathroom doors. Work events suddenly popped up out of nowhere. Always at night. Always last minute. And still ill. I said nothing. Because arguing with someone who's already made up their mind is like screaming into a hurricane. So I stayed calm. Still. Quiet. She thought silence meant surrender. It didn't. It meant I'd started listening for the lies she hadn't said out loud yet. I wasn't paranoid. I was just paying attention to a story she didn't realize was already unraveling. She would look at me like I was insane. Like I was creating stories in my head. Like I was the problem. The storm. The reason she was pulling away. And maybe for a moment, she had me wondering if I really was. Until I stopped reacting. And started observing. I stopped trying to make her comfortable. Stopped asking for explanations she never planned to give. Stopped explaining why I felt what I felt. Because I didn't need her approval. I needed the truth. And if she wasn't going to give it to me, I'd find it myself. She kept laughing. That soft, dismissive kind of laugh you use when you want someone to feel small. Whenever I asked where she'd been, she'd roll her eyes, mutter something about "not this again." When I asked why her text stopped mid-conversation, she'd look up from her screen and say I was obsessed. She had a way of making concern feel shameful, of twisting honesty into weakness. I'd ask a simple question, and she'd tilt her head just enough to make me feel like I was being irrational for even noticing she'd changed. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. The smirk, the exaggerated sigh, the pause before replying. Like she was choosing the exact tone to make me feel foolish. She told me I was overthinking, that I was spiraling, that I was the one creating problems where there weren't any. And maybe once, I would have believed her. Maybe once, I would have apologized for feeling what I felt. But not anymore. No? I just nodded and started watching. I watched her phone light up when she thought I wasn't looking. I watched the way her smile changed when she replied to messages I never saw. I watched her fingers tap, fast, careless, like there was no risk anymore. Because she didn't think I was a threat. She thought I was broken, tamed, safe. But I wasn't asking questions anymore. I was building answers. Quietly. There's a moment in every breakdown when you realize the person in front of you isn't even trying to lie well. That's when I knew I wasn't being paranoid. I was just alone in a relationship, built on noise, deflection, and carefully rationed affection. I started small. I checked timestamps, noticed patterns, took photos of the calendar she didn't know I could see. I set up a camera in my office, the one she used for Zoom calls when I wasn't home. And what I saw wasn't shocking. It was just confirming. Late-night calls, outfits that didn't match the events she claimed to attend, smiles that weren't meant for me. I never interrupted, never confronted, because what she wanted was a fight, a scene, a meltdown she could point to and say, "See? This is why I don't tell you things. You're unstable." So I gave her nothing. No anger, no begging, no accusations. Just calm, just silence, just evidence. She once said, "You seriously need help." And maybe I did, but not the kind she meant. I didn't need therapy for paranoia. I needed distance from someone who gaslighted me while staring me dead in the eyes. She mocked my doubts, dismissed my instincts, turned suspicion into a weapon, and pointed it at me every time I got too close to the truth. So I stopped showing my hands and started preparing the one card she wouldn't see coming. Proof. She lied with ease, like she'd rehearsed it, like the truth was too boring to be worth telling. I would ask simple things: where she was, who she met, why she changed clothes before going to work, and she'd tilt her head, frown slightly, then deliver a story so smooth. I almost admired the performance. Almost. But I wasn't questioning anymore. Not because I believed her. Because I already knew. The screenshots told one version. The GPS logs told another. The camera footage from our own apartment? That was the final nail. And still, she spoke to me like I was blind. Like the version of me who trusted her was still standing there. But he wasn't. He had left quietly weeks ago. Right around the time I realized her explanations came faster than her eye contact. There's a kind of calm that hits when you stop needing to be wrong just to keep someone close. And I had hit it. Another man's voice. Not in bed, no. She wasn't that careless. But in my space. Late evening. Wine glasses. Laughter that sounded nothing like the one she gave me lately. And when she came home that night, she kissed me on the cheek. Soft. Distant. Said she was tired. I just nodded. Set her plate on the table. Listened to her talk about how hard her day had been. How exhausting people were. All the while, she didn't know. I just watched her, hours earlier. Laugh like a woman who didn't owe anyone explanations. Especially not me. She once told me, "I wish you trusted me more." And that line stuck with me. Because she didn't mean, "I wish you believed in us." She meant, "I wish you'd stop looking." That wasn't a plea for closeness. It was a demand for blindness. But I had seen enough. And now, watching her lie to my face, felt like watching a rerun of a show I'd already finished. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. Some people break down at discovery. I didn't. Because I wasn't surprised. Not after weeks of watching the mask slip. I just sat there, listening to her describe a version of reality that didn't exist anymore. If it ever had. She talked about next weekend. Plans. Schedules. Dinner with friends. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because it was her last time getting to plan anything with me, and I wanted her to enjoy it. She lied to my face. I let her. Because the final scene was already written. And soon, she would be the one watching it play out. Only this time in silence. She was used to chaos. Raised voices. Tears. People who fought to stay in her orbit. Even when she kept spinning away from them. So when I finally called her into the kitchen, on a calm Sunday evening, she assumed it was another scene. She braced herself. For accusations. For anger. For me to fall apart in front of her. But none of that happened. I just stood there. Pulled out my phone. Tapped the screen. Pressed play. No words. Just the footage. It was her. Clear as day. Her voice. Her laugh. Her silhouette in my office with someone who didn't live here. Didn't belong here. Her body froze. Not immediately. It took a few seconds, like her brain was still trying to rewrite the scene. While her eyes absorbed the truth. You could almost see it happen. The exact second where, "I've got this," collapsed into, "He knows." She didn't speak. For once. She had no monologue ready. No spin. No tone. No performance. She looked at me. And I looked right back. No fury in my eyes. No satisfaction either. Just the stillness of a man who'd already processed the ending. Long before she realized the credits had started to roll. She opened her mouth once. Maybe to explain. Maybe to lie again. Maybe to beg. But I didn't give her the space. Because I wasn't there to listen. I was there to end. I turned off the screen. Slid the phone into my pocket. Stepped past her. Not rushed. Not theatrical. Just done. She followed. Said my name like it suddenly mattered again. Reached for my arm like the same hands that broke us could somehow fix it now. But I didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Didn't ask why. Didn't demand anything. There was no part of me left in that conversation. No thread she could pull to make me unravel. Because closure isn't a gift you wait to receive. It's a decision. And I'd made mine. The moment I watched her lie to my face, knowing she was already living a second life, she thought I'd confront her, that I'd unravel, that I'd beg. But I wasn't there to argue. I was there to exit. No drama. No revenge. Just absence. Clean. Final. Unapologetic. She stood in the hallway. Barefoot. Frozen. The same place I'd once seen her dance, laugh, talk on the phone for hours, not with me. Now she stood there. Silent. Small. Like everything she'd built around her lies was collapsing. And I didn't even have to say a word. No shouting. No closing statements. No demand for accountability. Just the sound of my footsteps. Slow. Measured. Final. That sound told her more than any question ever could. Because when a man stops asking why, he's not confused anymore. He's just done. I could feel her presence behind me. Trembling, unsure. Like she wanted to reach out, but couldn't figure out which version of me she thought she was still talking to. And maybe that was the most tragic part. She still believed I was holding on to something she had let go of long ago. She whispered something. I didn't catch it. Maybe it was my name. Maybe it was a sorry. Maybe it was another excuse, another half-truth, another delayed confession. It didn't matter. Because for the first time in years, her voice didn't pull me back. It barely reached me. At the door, I paused. Not to hesitate. Not to reflect. Just to breathe. And in that breath, I realized. This was the calm I'd been waiting for. Not from her. From myself. Behind me, she didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, blinking fast. Like trying to process a reality that didn't include me anymore. And I didn't give her closure. Because the kind of woman who lies to your face while calling you paranoid doesn't deserve a monologue. She deserves a silence that never ends. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. No slam, no final word, just the soft click of a life being sealed shut. There was no weight on my back, no lingering doubt, just air, just forward. And it was in that first step down the hall that I realized I hadn't lost anything worth chasing. She thought I'd always come back, thought I'd fight to be believed, thought my love was the kind that forgave everything and forgot even more. But I'd already mourned the version of us that mattered, long before she realized what she was losing. And now? Now I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt release. She watched me walk away, and for the first time, I saw her break. Not because I hurt her, but because she finally understood. I wasn't coming back. The first message came that same night. A short one. Can we talk? I didn't open it, because I knew what came next. The cycle of confession, confusion, collapse. She didn't want to talk. She wanted control, re-entry, access. And I wasn't offering any of that. Not anymore. By morning, she'd sent two more. One angry, one soft. The pattern was familiar. Push, pull, distance, reach. Always balancing between guilt and manipulation. It felt scripted. The pacing, the tone changes. All part of a performance she'd run too many times. On people who never walked away. But I had. And now? I wasn't even angry. Just still. Completely still. There's a kind of quiet that no longer waits to be broken. It just is. She left a voicemail the next day. Her voice was different now. Not confident. Not sarcastic. Almost careful. She said she was sorry. Said she didn't know why she did what she did. Said I'd always been good to her. And then she asked if I could just say something. Anything. But I didn't need to say anything. Because what she was hearing now was louder than anything I ever could have told her. She was hearing her own echo. In a space I no longer occupied. A space that used to feel like a relationship, but was now just a hollow hallway she'd sealed from the inside. The day she stopped being honest, she posted something online. A vague caption. Sometimes you don't realize what you had until silence is all that answers. Friends commented hearts. Said she was strong. Said she deserved better. But none of them knew. None of them were there. When she weaponized my trust and dressed it up as concern for herself, I didn't comment. Didn't watch. Didn't care. Because I wasn't in the business of healing people who broke me, and only started crying once I stopped bleeding. I moved on slowly. Not with someone else. With myself. With my peace. With my morning routine. With the simple clarity of knowing I wasn't the problem. I was just the mirror that showed her who she really was. And when she smashed it, she wasn't prepared for the reflection to disappear with the glass. She wanted closure. She wanted a scene, a breakdown, a reaction. But I gave her none of that. I gave her a silence, so complete. It became a wall she could never climb. And now, she's still reaching, still testing the lock on a door I not only closed, but removed entirely. She didn't want to fix things. She wanted relief from the weight of guilt, from the echo of her own voice in an empty room. So she called again, this time not to argue, not to cry at, but to apologize. She said she didn't know why she did what she did, said she felt lost, said I didn't deserve it. And maybe for a moment, a version of me, the older one, might have picked up that call, might have tried to soothe her pain, as if mine hadn't come first, might have tried to make her feel better about what she'd done to me. But that version of me, he was buried, right next to all the times I let her rewrite the story, just to avoid being seen as the villain in her version of it. She wanted forgiveness, like it was an eraser, a magic phrase, a rewind button. But real forgiveness? It doesn't mean returning to the scene. It means leaving it, without leaving yourself behind. Forgiveness isn't always an act of compassion. Sometimes it's self-protection. Sometimes it's a door you close quietly, so you can walk forward, without dragging the noise behind you. She said she'd changed, that she finally understood. But growth built on consequence isn't growth. It's panic. She wasn't sorry about what she did. She was sorry that I didn't stay long enough to absorb it for her. Meanwhile, I was somewhere else entirely, sleeping better, thinking clearer, relearning who I was, without the constant static of her explanations. No emotional hostage situations. No guilt trips disguised as conversations. I didn't need to be right. I just needed to be gone. Some friends asked if I'd ever speak to her again, even just for closure. But they didn't understand. The silence was the closure, the exit, the line I didn't draw with words, but with absence. She was asking for a reunion with a man she'd already lost, not because he disappeared, but because she never truly saw him to begin with. And I wasn't coming back to fix what I didn't break. She wanted to be forgiven, but I didn't want to forgive. Not because I was bitter, not because I wanted her to hurt, but because I finally realized freedom isn't just walking away. It's never looking back. She started saying I was cold, that I'd changed, that I wasn't the man she remembered. And she was right. I wasn't. Because the man she remembered was exhausted, always second-guessing, always apologizing for feelings she never respected. Now I was quiet. Not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to protect. There's a kind of peace that feels unfamiliar at first, like walking barefoot on solid ground. After years of swimming in open water, she saw the silence and mistook it for ice. But it wasn't coldness. It was clarity. I didn't withdraw out of revenge. I just no longer wanted to be accessible to someone who mistook access for ownership. She tried to meet again, not to scream, not to beg, just to talk. But when someone pulls you under long enough, you stop mistaking air for affection. And I had no interest in going back, just to hear her say what she should have said. Before I stopped listening, she said I was being distant, that I was shutting her out. But I wasn't. I just wasn't available for the kind of emotional theater she used to star in. The spotlight was gone. The stage was empty. And the audience, me, had walked out a long time ago. I ran into her once. Unexpected. Public. Her expression cracked when she saw me, not because I looked different, but because I looked unaffected. There was no hesitation in my walk, no spark of recognition in my eyes. I didn't flinch. I didn't pause. She asked how I was. I said, good. And I meant it. Not as a weapon, not as a wall, just truth. Simple, plain, unshakable. She blinked like that one word. Hit harder than any speech. And maybe it did. Because people don't expect healing from those they wounded. They expect fragments, bitterness, lingering grief. But I had none of that. Only space and peace. She used to call me paranoid, insecure, too intense. Now she called me cold, because she finally understood what it felt like to speak into silence and get nothing back but what she called cold. I called clarity, and clarity is quiet. It doesn't rush, doesn't plead, doesn't perform. It just exists, outside the reach of someone who thought They'd never lose you. She kept lingering, not in presence, but in small, subtle ways. A message on a birthday, a saved playlist I hadn't touched in months, mutual friends dropping her name mid-conversation, like it still held meaning. But it didn't. Not anymore. She wanted to be missed, wanted to echo, wanted to be the shadow that followed me, long after the light changed. But I'd walked too far for that. I didn't carry ghosts. I carried lessons. It's strange how someone can shrink after they leave your life, how the voice that once filled your home becomes background noise in your memory. I used to remember the way she said my name. Now I'd have to try to imitate it, just to recall the sound, not because I blocked it out, but because it lost meaning. Once it stopped being honest. There was a time I thought her absence would ruin me, that I'd replay her voice in my head, until it turned to dust. But silence has a way of rewiring memory, and what I once thought was love, I now saw for what it was. Emotional exhaustion dressed up as commitment. People asked if I missed her, and I didn't know how to explain that you can't miss someone who never really saw you. You can't miss the version of yourself that lived to be enough for someone who was never full. I didn't hate her. I didn't resent her. I just let her fade, like turning down the volume on a song you once thought defined you, until you realize it never even made your playlist. Someone else just kept playing it on repeat. She tried again recently. An old photo, a caption that wasn't subtle. Some people come into your life and leave you changed forever. She wanted me to see it, feel something, react, but I scrolled past it like weather. Not because I was numb, because I was clear, because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's simply not noticing what would have broken you a year ago. She wanted to be missed, but you don't miss the thing that taught you how to breathe again. Once it stopped stealing your air, I didn't avoid her name. I just stopped needing it to mean anything. She thought I'd stay in pieces, that I'd pause my life, waiting for her to change her mind, that I'd live inside the wreckage and call it loyalty. But I wasn't broken. I was just shedding what didn't belong anymore. There's a difference between healing and hiding. I didn't run. I didn't distract myself with noise. I faced every part of what she did, what I allowed, what I ignored, and I forgave myself for staying too long in a place that kept proving it didn't want me whole. Wholeness didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like walking into a room and not checking for her energy. It felt like sleeping without flinching, like reading a book and not thinking about how she'd criticize the ending. Small things. Peace isn't loud. It's consistent. She was a chapter, not the story. And some pages you don't reread, not because they weren't real, but because you've already lived them, already learned from them, already outgrown what once fit you perfectly, only because you were smaller. I'm not bitter. I'm not waiting. I'm just moving, steady, quiet, clear. And she still thinks silence is emptiness. But for me, silence is peace. Silence is presence. Silence is proof that I made it through without losing myself. She never got a final conversation. No long goodbye. No emotional handshake. Because sometimes closure isn't a door you walk through. It's a door you lock from the inside and throw away the key. Because you know better now. I didn't hate her. I just no longer needed her to understand, to apologize, to validate my pain. Because growth doesn't beg to be seen. It simply becomes undeniable. She thought I'd stay broken. But broken men seek revenge. Whole men don't look back. And me? I wasn't healing for her to see. I was healing. So the next time I loved, it wouldn't come from survival. It would come from strength. And that's the kind of love she will never get close to again. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.